Welcome to the StreetMakers Training video. In section 1, we'll be covering how to safely facilitate a play street and giving you some ideas of games to try. In section 2, Carla from the road safety team will be giving you advice on aspects of road safety that you'll need to keep in mind when you're a street maker. Remember to get in touch with us at the end of the video if you'd like any more information about how to become a street maker. Until then, enjoy. I'm Diane from the Play Streets team. Westminster Council have a commitment to all residents to give them as many opportunities as possible to get active. Children and young people are a big part of their communities. And for various reasons, they're unable to get out and play as safely as they'd like to. Play is an important part of children and young people's well-being. Not only does it help their general health and their physical activity, it also helps with their social interaction and personal development. Active Westminster recognised the need for children and young people to be able to play safely in their communities. And so they've worked together with the road safety team to make play streets happen. Some streets in Westminster are designated play streets. This means that at certain times of the day, play is more important than traffic. The Play Streets team will be providing some activities on certain streets at specific times over the summer. After that, that's where street makers come in. Street makers will be local residents, parents, carers, teachers, anyone who wants to continue activating their streets for play. Active Westminster will help to empower you to do this by giving you the information you need and any sort of encouragement too. Until then, here are a few ideas of some games that you can try. You only need very basic equipment and your enthusiasm, of course, to get started. Good luck.
The first game we're going to show you how to play is called Champ. All you need to play Champ is a football and some chalk. Shelley's drawing a large square on the floor with a piece of chalk. She'll then divide that large square into 4 smaller squares. Stanley is now numbering the squares 1 to 4. The 4th square is what we call the Champ square. So he's now drawing a little semicircle in the corner, and that's where Champ always stands to serve the ball. Shelley's also drawing a line where children can wait until the next available Champ square becomes free, and then they can step into the game. Champ will always start the game off first. So if you're in square number 4, you are Champ. You start by hitting the ball into the square of the person opposite you. Now the whole point of the game is to get someone out, ideally Champ. So you hit the ball into their square and hopefully they'll miss it. You can be out by either missing the ball that someone has hit to you, or the ball bouncing in your square and it bouncing out of the square without you touching it. Players hit the ball to each other until someone is out. Each person then moves up a square. So if you're in square number 2, you move up to number 3. If you're in square number 1, you move up to number 2. It's quite a fast-moving game, so everyone gets to have a go, and it's quite fair in that way. Everyone wants to be Champ, so that's finally happened. This game is called handball. To play this game, all you need is a tennis ball and a wall. Each person hits the ball against the wall. The point of the game is to keep it going for as long as they can, without missing the ball every time it bounces back to them, just like tennis. This is handball tennis. It's better to use a bigger ball when you're playing this game because it's easier to hit. You hit the ball back and forth to each other until one of you isn't able to hit it back or someone kicks it by mistake. The next player then comes on. The rules are flexible. You can decide that the winner stays on or that each pair plays until someone reaches a particular score first. It depends on how many children are waiting to play and what works best for you. To play hopscotch, you draw 10 squares in chalk and number them 1 to 10. A stone is thrown and you hop to the top square, hop back, balancing on one leg, and pick up the stone from the square it's landed on, hopping back to the beginning. This game is called Kirby. To play Kirby, you split the team into 2 groups, so you have equal numbers of children on each side of the road. Each player then throws the ball onto the opposite curb, only gaining a point if the ball lands directly on the curb. The game is more challenging the further away the curb is. The winner is the person who has the most points. This is kick tennis. You'll need a football and a piece of chalk. Draw a line across the ground like an invisible tennis net. Each player is on the opposite side and kicks the ball back and forth to each other. The ball has to bounce once before you kick it. If it bounces and you miss it, or if it hits the line, you're out. The next player can then step in. Skipping is a lot of fun and great exercise. Even if you only have one rope, like they have here, you can turn it into a competition and count how many skips each person does until they stop. The winner then is the person that can do the most skips or skip for the longest. Skipping can also be done in small groups, with one person holding the rope on each side.
Hello, my name is Carla Leo. I'm a road safety officer with Westminster City Council. Welcome and thank you for becoming a street maker and facilitating play throughout Westminster with active streets. I'll be taking you through the road safety that's required when doing so. So first of all, we'll be looking at high visibility clothing, any placement of safety equipment on the road, positioning of street makers when you are facilitating a session, and obviously awareness of any vehicles during on-street activities, and questions to finish it off. So firstly, any high visibility wear when you're on the carriageway should be bright and reflective, and there are examples below such as a jacket or indeed an armband. When we're looking at children when they're on street, it would be really advisable if they could integrate it into their current outfit. So that could be shoelaces, or indeed we've got some armbands, so they can be worn on actually their arm, their wrist, or indeed their ankles. Some trainers or footwear currently has reflective and fluorescent strips within it, and it's perfectly advisable and safe for them to wear what they currently have. We're going to move on to placement of equipment now. So we do advise that any bollards, cones or signage, or even indeed some temporary barriers that would support the enforcement of active streets should be reflective and bright. As can be seen on screen, we've got something called parking buddies. So they have messaging on them that just reminds drivers and riders that there is a play street in session. Parking buddies as well should always be placed at the entrance or the end of an active street. As you can see in the picture on screen, the parking buddy is in the carriageway, so on the road, on the approach to an activity. So it's warning drivers and riders that there's an activity just ahead, and to be aware that they're in the road. The parking buddies should either be placed as well, if there's any surplus, on the footway or indeed on the carriageway throughout the entire length of the active street. So there are two options in terms of enforcing a play street or the play activity within an active street. So the first option is the preferred option for Westminster, and this is what we will usually be using. So any bollards, cones or signage or indeed temporary barriers are to be placed on the pavement and at the entrance of an active street. They should always be removable, so they shouldn't be fixed down in any way with any bolts. It just makes it easier to remove them at the end of a session. By placing them at the entrance of an active street on the pavement, it still retains access for any vehicles should they need it, if they need to access properties within the active street. And as I said, this is the preferred option that we will be going for. However, the second option is where we can place any bollard, cones or signage at the entrance of an active street, but we can place it in the road, so that's the carriageway, to block or restrict vehicle movements throughout the active street. If you are going to go for this option during the times of operation of a active street, you need to have a member of staff that is Lantra trained to be in position during the times of operation, the entire duration of your times of operation of your active street, so that they can traffic manage and let vehicles in and out without disrupting any other street makers whilst they're facilitating play on street. Now I'm literally just going to be talking about the positioning of street makers. So when you are out on the roads, you need to be positioned where you can view oncoming traffic from all directions. And in order to do this, we advise that your back is to the curb, so you have a 180-degree view of any oncoming traffic when you're facilitating play. So that's for you yourself, as well as the safety of the children and adults in the road. I'm just going to play a video to show you how that would work. As you can see, looking in both directions, and you're able to have a clear view of the road in front of you and to the right and to the left. When you're also on road, and you will obviously be standing in the middle of a road, it's also advisable not to set up or conduct any activities, play activities, between tightly packed spaces between parked cars. One, because you don't know whether there are any drivers in there, or you don't usually have time to check, so you don't want to be in a position where you're basically squashed or trapped in between two vehicles. If you do have a larger space or a larger gap in between those parked vehicles, you're able to maximize your visibility to drivers and riders. And indeed, you can also use the middle of the road as well. So you can use the majority of space in the road, and you can still use your viewing of 180 degrees sight lines for yourself, as well as the children and the adults within the road. I'm just going to show an example here, and it's shown by the arrows within this picture. Now, as we've been talking about vehicles, as they obviously do still need to travel through an active street, it's just making sure we're as aware as possible. So for an active street through traffic, so that traffic driving all the way through an active street is not permitted during any time or day of operation of an active street. We only allow for access only. So this is anybody or any resident or visitor that needs to access properties within the school street. Any drivers or riders have to adhere to the speed limit that is in place for an active street. For speed limits within Westminster, it is 20 miles per hour. So we do advise that drivers and riders stick to the 20 mile per hour speed limit as advertised on the road. Everyone has the same obligations with regards to speed. We do ask that if there are any residents or residents, visitors within that area, that they do share the information, talk to each other and pass on the message so that they know if anybody is leaving the properties within an active street, that they're made aware that potentially there will be children and adults playing in street and that the speed limit is obviously 20 miles per hour. This is just to make sure everybody is as safe as possible whilst they're on street having a play session. So as we can see here, street makers, and I advise that they should potentially either wear a whistle or have a keyword to alert other street makers, children and adults, whilst they're taking part in an activity, that a vehicle is coming or is close by to them or is on the approach to them. So below is showing what you should do in that scenario. So you can obviously, once you've alerted people either by blowing the whistle or calling out that keyword, you would do one of two things. So the first one would be stepping onto the pavement. And when you do step onto the pavement, it would be a case of still checking from right to left or left to right all around. And then you would have to take a step backwards in order to reach the pavement and make sure you're safely out of the way of any oncoming vehicles. The second option, if you were to step out of the path of oncoming vehicles, you can do that by being in line with a vehicle as shown in this video. So you step aside, make sure the vehicle has gone by, and then you can move on to resume your activity either in the middle of the road or in a large gap between other vehicles. That's come to the end of the training so far. If you do have any questions, there will be a question and fact sheet sent, obviously, with this training video. So hopefully we'll answer any of your questions. But if you do have any additional questions, you can send them in directly to the Active Westminster team. Right here are the contact details. So there's a telephone number, or indeed you have the email address there. And there's other options where you can contact them through the social media and various other ways to contact them directly if you indeed need any support in any way throughout the StreetMakers training, or indeed when you are an active street maker. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time, and I wish you the best of luck.